Amy Mongata helps people all over the world live burnout-free by bringing clarity, direction, and positive habits into their lives. She is the author of The Path to Break Free from Burnout and the host of the Life on My Terms podcast. And of course, she's joining us this morning. Amy, thanks for being with us here in Hometown Living.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a topic that we probably have all experienced in one way or another. We've heard this term burnout, but really, how do you define that term?
That is my favorite question. I think you said it best. We all go through cycles of burnout in our lives, right? And these are just indicators, if we're paying attention, that a change is needed. It can be as easy as taking a vacation, and in some cases it might be a bigger change is needed, but we do go through cycles of burnout. It's when we start to have the chronic stress in our lives because we're either ignoring the change that's needed or we are immersed in the chronic stress stages that we start to get into more burnout syndrome. And burnout syndrome is where we have the exhaustion, the isolation, the escape fantasies where we're feeling very stuck, irritability, and where the bigger health and frequent illnesses can come in. And more importantly, this is where the mental, physical, and emotional well-being is sort of all consuming in all facets of our lives.
So we now kind of know what the issue is. What are the ways that we can solve this? How can we combat burnout in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think where I always start in my workshops and with clients is usually burnout is stemming because we're either not protecting our time, we're not protecting our energy, and we're not putting ourselves first. A lot of us are in the people-pleasing mode where we're constantly looking for the approval of others and finding our worth there. And sometimes we're also in that comparing phase where we're looking for what's next. And so we have to sit down and really audit our time and say, where are we spending our time? Oftentimes we can find certain stressors that are time related. Maybe we are opening up our calendar for everyone to put stuff on at any given moment in time. We also need to look where our energy is being served. Are we giving our energy more to others than we are to ourselves? Are we not allowing ourselves time for rest and recovery? And lastly, it's just putting ourselves first. Really digging deep into our authentic self. I feel like a lot of my clients that are suffering from burnout have lost their identity along the way. They have started to conform for that next promotion, and it's what my boss wants, not necessarily what I believe and what I want. And so we see this with very career-driven folks. We also see it with busy moms and even college students.
So we are seeing it, and you provided some solutions for us to at least be aware of how to get from burnout to a little bit more of a stress-free day to day. Well, with your new book, what would you hope the reader would take away from walking along your journey and your advice?
Well, the first thing is you're not alone. I think it's really fascinating that burnout is actually not a mental health diagnosis, yet it leans itself to such isolation, and folks can feel very alone. And so I do want this to be a resource where you do feel like, if anything, you've got an accountability buddy like right there with you, and somebody who understands burnout. I've been there, I've done it. And so my story's in there as well. But I also want folks to realize that this is an action behavior change book. Folks are really going to be able to make changes for themselves if they go through the way that it's written and they access the resources that I have available. They can truly make some change. And I think that's the most important thing, is that change is possible. It's just going to take a little bit more self-awareness and a little bit of work.
Self-awareness and a little bit work, and you're helping so many be able to do that work. You also have a podcast. So talk a little bit about how that walks alongside your journey, your book, and really getting people from point A to point B.
Yeah, Life on My Terms was created in my own quest to sort of like find passion for myself and help others in a bigger way. A lot of folks don't have access to healthcare, let alone like the ability to have coaching services. And so I use the podcast as a way to bring on experts and use my stories and the learnings from my own coaching practice to share 1% improvements that folks can make in their lives. It's all about the little behavior changes and the little bits of improvement that we want to change and transform our lives. And this podcast just brings the access to everyone. That is the whole goal of it.
Amy, thanks so much for joining us here on Hometown Living. We, of course, want to make sure our viewers know how they can get a hand on a copy of your book, but also listen to Amy's podcast. Check out her website right there on your screen, but easy enough. You can find Amy on Instagram at Project Amy.